I don't think so. Because every character is their own person, I would hope. And then they have to do, you have to, I guess the trick is to make them like the Marine slogan, though, they have to be all that they can be. You're making them as much themselves as they possibly can. And so if you're working towards that end, they're going to be theoretically become more and more and better at that. More themselves.
I agree with what you're saying, but I also agree with your first statement that it's not gender specific.
I don't.
I think that when I create a female character, I am very aware of the fact that she's female. I figure out what her expectations are for herself and what her society's expectations are for her. And there are always lots and lots of friction points where those don't match up. But I do the same for my male characters as well.
Right. Otherwise, then they're not well-rounded. You know, the goal would be to have everybody as real as possible.
I think one of the challenges that writers have today, and when I see people reacting to books and reviews, I think it's a really difficult challenge, is that the very things that makes a person who they are the things that our society is trying to ignore. And for good reason. We want to ignore whether you're a man or woman. We want to ignore whether you're Asian or black or white or from Antarctica. You're actually a penguin. Or whatever it is, whatever the specifics are that we know is not part of what makes up the nobility of your character. Our society, our society is trying to turn a blind eye to those things, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. But as a writer, we have to take the character and make them specific. The character cannot be generic. It has to actually be, 1/8 Korean, or the character has to be from Italy, or the character has to be a male. And we have to take those qualities and we have to get them across the reader, which means that we don't want to use stereotypes. We do need to use the concepts, the tropes, the little hints. There's what lets a person know the nature of your character. And often, those then suddenly turn out to be the exact thing that particular year people think you shouldn't be doing. Whatever it is. So I think we have a real challenge, and we're both trying to show the nobility of our character, and we want to support the fact that we want to live in a society where everyone's equal. But as a writer, we also have to make our characters specific, and we have to show their to give you an example, someone was just complaining to me that certain cartoons that had cultural stereotypes in them that were made in the 50s were being called racist. And the person was saying, does having no racism mean that we can't celebrate that the Italians had certain qualities or the French had certain qualities? I mean, aren't we losing something if we can't say these things and can't show them? And he was saying he didn't think this was racist, he just thought it was kind of a fun thing, And I think that's a line, and it comes down in particular to making of female characters. We want to both show that our characters have this nobility of spirit that we know everyone has, but we also want to make them have particular qualities so that the reader recognizes them as a particular female, not as just, a generic character. And I think everybody kind of solves this problem in a different way, and there's no real right or wrong answer, and sometimes what one reader will like, another reader won't. But I think it's one of the things that makes it both difficult and kind of interesting in what we're doing in this.
The difficult, don't use this, it makes me nervous. I'm afraid I'm going to drop it. I think the difficulty with doing any character that's not the default is still the straight white male. And so anytime you're doing a character that is not that, you have to always think about, readers will always, in a lot of ways, will see them as a representative of their group and not as an individual. And that's one of the challenges as a writer is to try to think of them as an individual and and try to ignore that the potential reader's voice in the back of the head is is she too weak or is she too strong? Is this character do they act gay enough, or are they black enough, or what are two or whatever? And then you get you don't want to do the stereotypes, but on the other hand, then people say you're whitewashing the character or straight washing. I don't know what's the word I made. So that's the problem with we're still the default narrative I think is still of the straight white male, and so any character who's not in that category, when you're writing from perspective of a straight white male, it's almost very freeing, because then they can just be themselves. They don't have to be, I just read a whole book from a 16-year-old boy's perspective, and then they can just be themselves, and you don't have to think of them as a representative of their group.
But we're female, so it's